sometimes feel overwhelmed by sadness and sorrow? How do you express it? Let's see what Jesus teaches us about grief in today's Points to Ponder. Hello, I'm your Christian coach, Jo Heather Dodson. Jesus had a friend who he loved very much named Lazarus. You can read about him in the Bible in John 11, verses 1 through 44. Lazarus became sick, so his sisters, Mary and Martha, sent for Jesus. In the meantime, Lazarus died, and Jesus arrived 4 days after his burial. While Jesus was standing at Lazarus' graveside, he wept. He wept so much that those nearby remarked on how much Jesus must have loved Lazarus. What can you glean about sorrow from this account? Number 1, it's okay to express your sadness and grief. As I read John 11, I notice something. Jesus plainly speaks more than once to the fact that he will raise Lazarus from the dead before he does it. So you may be wondering, why does Jesus weep at the graveside if he knows he is raising Lazarus up from the dead? Death feels like an all-consuming pain, and Jesus deeply feels the loss of his friend. When he sees Lazarus' sisters and others weeping, the word says he groans in his spirit and is troubled. When Jesus weeps, he is fully man. His response validates for us what it looks like to be filled with grief and sorrow in the midst of personal loss. You can weep openly. How do you know? It's what Jesus did. Number 2, death was not part of the original plan. We who believe in and live for Jesus have a hope of a resurrection. We live knowing that physical death isn't the true end of life. You see that fact expressed here by Martha and Mary. But this fact doesn't mean that tears and sorrow are not appropriate and called for. This account reminds us that death is not what God originally intended. So death inherently brings sadness and mourning. Because of sin, death entered the world. And someday, death, as our enemy, will be destroyed by Jesus Christ. This is a very deep subject, so I encourage you to read more for yourself. Maybe you can start with 1 Corinthians 15, 25 and 26. Number 3, Christ understands. Jesus shows us here that he understands what it's like to weep and grieve with a hurting heart. Isaiah 53:3 describes Jesus as a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. God wants you to know you can come to him with your full self right where you are in your darkest days and hours. He loves you and wants you to know he's listening to your cries. Maybe you aren't in the midst of grief right now, but what can you do differently to support others who are? If you want to learn more about coaching with me, visit my website, yourchristiancoach.net. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you next Tuesday as we chat more about Points to Ponder.